Thank you so much, Miyamoto-san. I look forward to it. Okay. All right, catch up later. Guys, you would never believe who that was. It was the inventor of Pokemon, and he has asked me to create a lineup of new Pokemon. The problem is, there's already a lot. I feel like they've made them all, which is why they've come to me, because they know if anyone is capable of making unique, original, memorable Pokemon, it's this guy. If you go to pokemon.com/US/Pokedex, you get them all in order. So we can sort of see what's already out there. And you have to load more, and you're just gonna have to click load more a lot of times because there's a lot of Pokemon. There you go, I've loaded them all. So if I go up to, oh my God, if I go back to the very top, these are the classics. I don't care how up to date you are with Pokemon, nothing will beat the nostalgia and the classic vibes of the original 151 Pokemon. However, if you go all the way to the end, let's see how far to the bottom of the barrel they have to scrape here. What is this? Raging Bolt. These are all so random. Terrapagos. They become so complex. Occasionally we have something simpler, but for the most part, a lot of these are pretty intense. And I think that's because they've sort of gone through all the basic objects and shapes and animals. But I am here to prove that we are not yet out of classic ideas. And to aid me in this quest, I'm going to be using a random object generator to generate one object at a time with pictures to help me out. Nail clippers! Hey! Bet you didn't think there'd be a Pokemon based on nail clippers, did you? Bet you didn't think you wanted that, did you? And it comes with this useful little picture that I could put in here for reference, and we can get to work. And before I make my design, I need to figure out the types. I felt that while steel type is obvious, a secondary type of being dark type also felt somewhat fitting because there's just something nefarious about a Pokemon that hungers after toenails. Now I enter the design phase with the assumption that the first thing I draw will not be the final design, but it's always good to get that out of your system. And in this case, it's literally a pair of nail clippers, somewhat anthropomorphized into a creature sort of thing. We've got to try out a few different things, including playing with the concept of maybe clippery big hands. Maybe that's how the Pokemon attacks or does its thing. That just felt a little odd and unweighted, at least in that form. But with my next design, when I flipped the clippers horizontally and overall widened the design, everything made a lot more sense, especially when I sketched in a bit of a scribbly mouth, particularly because the shards that I drew in for the teeth, to me, made perfect sense as to why he clips nails and teeth and horns, because he shoves them in himself. So I approached what would become my final design with a bit more simplification, going for a bit more of a Pokemon appeal, with a bit of a pear-shaped body and with arms that would be more noodly rather than just solid steel arms. I wanted this Pokemon to feel more creepy than too imposing. And it's here, and when I start to shift towards line work and color, that I realize that dark type isn't quite the perfect fit, but Poison made a lot of sense, especially for a Pokemon that's spending a lot of time around other Pokemon's feet. This needs to be a Pokemon that's impervious to foot fungus. And I also thought adding the tongue not only added an ickiness to the poison and a creepiness to the design, but also accentuates that poisony feel. Something that's intent on getting his prize, even if you or he get dirty along the way. It's so weird. I love and hate this design all at once, which tells me it's absolutely perfect. So all that's left is to name him, and of course Pokemon names are usually a fun play on words. And in this case, I've gone with Nomato, because he noms your toes, and I think that works. Nomato, a poison steel-type Pokemon who traverses along the ground looking for toenails and claws that he can claim to be his new teeth and horns. Be cautious around Nomato. You don't know where that tongue has been. I'd say we've successfully conquered nail clippers. Up next, balloon. Hang on, is there a Pokemon based on a balloon? There are several. We're not treading trodden territory. Chair, however, no. Ah, haha, yes. Beautiful. Let's do it. For the types of my chair Pokemon, I thought I'd go something a little more uplifting. Normal, because chairs are very normal, but with a bit of fairy in there because I feel like something of a cleansing after Nomoto. And as with our nail clipper design, we start off with just a few little sketches playing with couch shapes. Now this is particularly hard because whether you're going with a couch, sofa or chair aesthetic, they look exactly like a couch, sofa or chair. I decided to go with the split between the cushion and the chair being the opening for a mouth, which would also give me nice puffy lips, and creases in the couch being where the eyes could be. While we are of course inspired by the chair, we're breaking that shape up a bit more to look a bit more animalistic. We have his 4 little quadruped stumpy legs at the bottom there so he can walk around, but his arms stretch out with their big puffy reach to pull you in for a hug. I think we can stay away from Insidious with this one. I think this guy's friendly, and he's allowed to be friendly because there's probably going to be all sorts of other weird, gross ones that I'm going to come up with in this series. So this one just wants a big, solid hug. And if he feels threatened, he'll still hug you. It'll just be really hard to get out of it. I decided his name would be Bring It In, because it's like what he says when he comes up to you. It's like he wants a hug. Bring it in.
Bring it in. A friendly, normal fairy-type Pokemon who loves nothing more than a cozy hug. The only problem is escaping his comfortable grasp, not because he won't let you go, but because you will likely never want to leave.
I'm just getting warmed up, baby. Up next, camera. I think we can do this. It's definitely more complex, but you know what? There's room for complexity in Pokemon. Let's just see if we can do it right. So first off, we pick the types of my camera inspired Pokemon. Because it's mechanically inspired and requires power, I thought we could play with that and amplify that with an electric type, and psychic because, I don't know, sees into things or something. The whole lens thing it also feels a bit crystal ball-y. So start off with sketches focusing on the lens and just sort of adding body and limbs, and it sort of felt weird and didn't quite know where I'd end up going. But then I realized I was really sticking a bit too rigidly to literally the camera picture that I was given in my random object generation. And I realized the camera is many things, but I thought I'd go in the other direction, creating a Pokemon with shape and style inspired by the oldest of cameras, the ones that kind of look like accordions. That was how they focused, by stretching the lens out and in, had sort of big boxes built behind them that you had to cover in a sheet and look into. That just seems nicely disconnected from what people are currently familiar with, but also really fitting for the theme, and I felt gave me some design ideas that I can play with. This old-fashioned style of camera works perfectly, especially because the way the flashes used to work used to literally overload an electric light bulb with enough electricity that it would burst in its flash. And that just feels like a perfect match to an electric type Pokemon. The other fun thing I realized as the design was coming together is that the eye is actually at the end of this extendable, almost like a trunk. Those flash discs are kind of like the perfect camouflage, making people think that that's its eyes. Meanwhile, the actual eye, the camera lens, can move about and see wherever it needs to. Finally, adding that bit of body at the back where the camera operators used to have to go into to see in complete darkness makes for a perfect sort of cape or floating body for a Pokemon that has a bit more of a mystical floating feel. I love the sort of blank, hypnotized expression on this thing, sort of mesmerizing in a way that you could imagine he sort of hypnotizes or mesmerizes people he approaches. And the fact that the hood thing is empty, it's a place for a head to go into, makes me think that this guy might be able to go on top of people or Pokemon's heads and either show them illusions or possess them somewhat. It's the perfect mix of cute and creepy and weird and unfamiliar with the familiar. I'm really loving this design, especially with those colors added in. So I decided to name him Sei-Chi because it's like say cheese when you take a photo of someone. So he walks around saying Sei-Chi, which is super creepy. And in the end, this Pokemon seems more ghost than psychic, especially with that floating, mysterious backing. And he seems sort of like an object that might be possessed or haunted, which is perfect for a ghost type.
Sei-Chi, the ghost electric type Pokemon, whose decoy eyes will distract and flash you into being stunned, while the strange possessed creature or ancient artifact may well possess you, or show you things you cannot possibly unsee.
What can I say? I'm good at this. Let's see what else we're going to turn into a Pokemon. A puddle. A puddle? There are Pokemon that can become puddles. But do you know what? This is a challenge for a reason. Let's see what we can come up with. Well, first and foremost, obviously a puddle is water type, and I figure I want a complementary type to play with some aesthetic additions. So I went with ground because puddle's on the ground. And the first thing I drew was a puddle, which is as low as something can be. So I decided the puddle has to be on something and started to sort of sketch this concaved bowl with a head and stumpy legs. And then I realized that's kind of just a turtle shell, but upside down. And that was the beginning of the real idea. I took that little glimpse of familiarity and ran with it, making a crusty rock-like turtle shell from which a head and limbs protrude but go downwards, so we sort of have an upside-down turtle shape, where the limbs and extremities of the creature are more like tree roots than anything, because normally this Pokemon loves to live in the ground. Its puddle usually lies flat at the surface with the ground, and I like the idea that it's got this little tail that pokes up, maybe has a leaf, and all of his limbs and his head being in the ground to try and soak up nutrients and to fill up his little puddle on his back. This works so well in the Pokemon universe for a number of reasons. First of all, you have a natural environment and habitat, but also there's like a kind of camouflage, a disguise that while this Pokemon would be peaceful, they can of course be agitated by accidentally being stepped in, because their puddle is their source of energy, their life. So if you step in it or splash it, it becomes confused or drained. So in a Pokemon battle, the more water this Pokemon has in its back and the less disturbed it is, the stronger its abilities and its attack will be. And I could also imagine like another evolution of this Pokemon having its tail be grown into a more powerful tree-like thing. I just really feel like overall the new aesthetic, as well as the mix with the familiar, like the upside down turtle and the puddle thing, is actually really working for me in a way I did not expect, getting a puddle as a prompt. And I decided to name him Eltrut, which is turtle backwards, because it's like a reverse turtle.
Eltrut, an ancient water ground type, incredibly difficult to find unless you accidentally step into the puddle on its back, which will cause the Eltrut to emerge and be enraged if confused, and chase you away until it can return in solitude for another several hundred years undisturbed.
I think I have successfully proven my ability to do this to the point where I think it's been too easy, and I think it's time that we generate two that will be combined into one ultimate super rare Pokemon. Don't go there. This will be a family-friendly video. Children will click on this video. All right, it's time to get our mind out of the gutter and into this Pokemon. What type of Pokemon will it be? Well, I decided bug because the helmet could link to a sort of carapace aesthetic, which would make it a sort of armored style Pokemon, which also works well with the bug type. And dragon because I want it to be cool, and dragon things are usually cool, and I figured that would give me motivation to pull away from being weird or gross. The first design started to look more like elephanty / kangaroo / armored thing. And when I play with a design after my first design, I usually try and pull away from my initial instinctive direction. And in this case, I went more worm based, I guess. At least in the sense that the big body would curve around and it would be held up from its sort of abdomen. But we're trying to balance the aesthetic of the Pokemon design to be between bug and dragon, with big carapace shell things that would act like wings that, while maybe providing some lift, would be more useful as giant pieces of armor that it could sort of push around its body and shield itself from attacks. But what about the baby lotion, you ask? Well, the other reason I sort of went for this wormy design, aside from being bug type, is that I basically pictured it's like a big tube that squeezes out its lotion. With the idea being that it spits out this extremely slippery substance that makes its attackers constantly fall or slip over or prone to missing, which is of course a substance that it moves around in and controls quite comfortably, resulting in a Pokemon design that is certainly bug-like, while still being cool enough to be considered dragon type with those big carapace-like wings and its fairly serious expression and design, but sticking enough to the core prompt of baby lotion and helmet, even to the extent that I use the original colors as inspiration for how I apply the colors to my Pokemon, including the texture on the surfaces of its carapace. And the purple cap of the baby lotion being the color of its mouth tube hole and its mandibles and eyes. But let's not forget the finishing touch, the delightfully slippery substance seeping from its mouth. Yay! Now for its name, I honestly feel like the baby lotion name is like a Pokemon name. Avino! I mean, it's kind of perfect, but for copyright reasons, we're gonna adjust it. This slippery boy is Helmino.
Helmino, the fearsome bug dragon type Pokemon. While this Pokemon cannot deal a lot of damage, it is almost impossible to hurt or hit because of its extremely powerful ability on the battlefield. The sludge it emits is neither poisonous nor harmful, however it is extremely slippery and can take hours and hours of scrubbing to remove its slippery effects.
Clearly I can't be bested, which is why I'm gonna finish off with a grand finale. The ultimate Pokemon. 3 objects. Bam! A bag, a sketch pad, and packing peanuts. These don't scream super rare, powerful Pokemon to me, but that's why it's a challenge, because I'm going to prove that it can be done. Now, I would have loved to be adventurous with the type of this last Pokemon, but all 3 prompts are as normal as they can possibly be, so I decided to add flying in there for the mix to give me some ability to be epic. Plus, I mean, at the end of the day, packing foam and paper bags and sketchbooks are all very light. So I feel like that really lends itself to flying, as does the shape of a sketchbook, which could be spread out and act as wings. So this was the beginning inspiration stage of my early designs, feeling my way through how I might use the sketchbook wings concept along with the paper bag forming some sort of the body or connecting to a box. I played around with a couple of concepts where the body is like an open box where it either spits out packing bead style things or lands on its opponent and wraps it up or captures it. And while this was working for me, it felt like it was trying too hard to be dragon type. So I pulled myself back from that dragon silhouette and instead leaned on this big boxy baggy shape for the entire body, focusing on that first and creating a sort of funnel leading to a mouth at the bottom, think like a bell sprout I guess, but entirely made of a cardboardy paper-like substance that is very crumpleable and very light, but so light in fact that its paper wings will let it fly and move quite quickly. Then I added on some nice big arms, hand things, but kept them completely flat and just bent them into the shape of the hand pose, which resulted in what I felt was a really cool design inspired by some incredibly uninspiring prompts. Leaning into the idea that this Pokemon, while more vulnerable than most, probably has pretty low HP, would be incredibly frustrating to battle against because how quickly it moves and can uncrumple itself, maybe can heal itself, but also confuses you and the battlefield by spewing out storms of foamy beads and by wrapping itself around you and spitting you out. I decided to name this one Garumple, a mix of gust and crumple. While conceptually it's not all that intimidating, well, anything big enough is intimidating. And I feel like this guy could be pretty big enough to swallow most Pokemon and spit them out in the battle.
Garumple, the flying normal type Pokemon. Don't be fooled by its seemingly fragile, crumpleable exterior. Garumple is quick to recover and even quicker to disorient its foes. Far swifter than it may appear from its large size and extremely stubborn. You do not want to make the Garumple grumpy.
So there we have it. I have made 6 Pokemon, and I actually feel like they're pretty good designs. Let me know in the comments if you feel like these fit in the Pokemon world. I mean, look, at the end of the day, with the 1,000+ Pokemon that do exist, there are plenty that feel like they don't exist in the Pokemon world. But have I captured a classic vibe? Have I captured designs that feel like they have longevity and an authentic fit in the Pokemon universe? I will let you be the judge of that, but I am very grateful to you for watching this, and of course, always grateful to my patrons for making these videos possible. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.